Hi everyone, thanks for watching. You can support our work on our website ageoftruth.tv. And please like our videos, subscribe to our channels on YouTube, BitChute and Brighteon. And remember to hit the bell for notifications. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook. To be sure not to miss any of our shows, you can sign up for our newsletter on our website ageoftruth.tv.
Hey Laura, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Wow, time flies. It's a long time since. It feels like a long time.
I know, right? Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It's so good to see you and been following your latest adventures and all your photography is just incredible.
Oh, you're so sweet.
So
thank you
awesome.
so much. Let me get Lucas on while when I have you through here and everything's good. You're loud and clear. That's good.
Sweet.
Seconds. Studio.
Hi.
Oh, so good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, Laura, how are you? It's so good to see you.
Yeah, everything's good. How have you been?
Well, a lot has been going on, right? I mean, all the time.
We had so much fun together, and I look forward to creating more.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Age of Truth TV. I'm Lucas Alexander in Copenhagen, Denmark. It's September 2025, and our special guest today is a fascinating American lady who is a truth and conspiracy researcher, author, lecturer, medical and intuitive astrologer. She is the great-granddaughter of U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who supposedly not only encountered ET alien beings, had UFO experiences, but also possibly made treaties with these off-world entities. She has a lot of fascinating information to share, and it's a great delight to welcome on the show Laura Eisenhower. Good evening from Copenhagen, Denmark, and welcome to our viewers on Age of Truth TV. Please like our video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell for notifications. We have an absolutely extraordinary and fascinating guest on the show today, a lady that I now consider a friend. She's also one of my preferred friends to party with, because we have been partying quite a lot, and I think we should do that also and have a lot of fun in this truth movement when we are tackling and juggling with all of these outrageous, extraordinary, and fascinating topics. So it's always good to have a great time, and she and I can certainly do that. So even without a drink, we're going to go into a very, very serious conversation today and talk about her wonderful, fascinating, and extraordinary life story. So let's go to Montana and say hello to our guest, the one and only Laura Eisenhower. Welcome on Age of Truth TV.
Thank you so much. It's so great to see you, Lucas. It was wonderful to meet you and spend time with you in Florida. We had so much fun together. And the familiarity is incredible. I feel like I've known you for so long. And yeah, so I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
So before we begin, and I have a lot of questions prepared, and before we hear your background and history as the great-granddaughter of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, and how you got into this whole field of truth and conspiracy research, and your possibly going to Mars and whatever that was, what was supposed to happen there. There's an interesting story about that as well. Please let me just begin somewhere else. Let's begin by talking about the truth movement that we are both in, about discernment, about skepticism, about also being open-minded with an open heart to hearing almost everything. And I think we have both heard everything. We have both been asking a lot of critical questions, and we also certainly have an open mind. But sometimes it's very hard to be too critical of people that you actually get close to and you have a certain affinity for and you get to know on a personal level. And if you really like them, it can be a little complicated sometimes to discern objectively whether their information is in fact valid or what they claim to have experienced, if that is actually real. So how do we go about well, discerning all of this information that we're acquiring from all sides all the time? What are your thoughts about this? How do you approach being open-minded, but being discerning and being critical? Who is real, who is not?
Yeah, great question. I feel discernment's, incredibly important, having boundaries, taking our time with the information, and that everybody that we talk to, and the way I approach it with myself when people hear my story is I encourage discernment. Take what resonates, leave the rest, see where this lands in your intuition, and your other research. What dots do you connect? Where does it maybe not make sense? And I love to, have an open discussion about it. I'm not steering a narrative here, and I think those that don't appreciate discernment are very bent on believing everything that they say. Some of it might be from, trauma, not being understood or heard throughout their life. And so, I'm careful about the way I express myself if I'm sensing that. But if it's promoting something that feels a little bit off to me, and you're not able to debate or ask questions or exercise discernment, and you're either banned or just shunned, that's very weird to me, and a huge red flag. So I think it's important to have an open mind and to navigate in with discernment and healthy boundaries, and just take it in like bites. Some things might line up with other people's testimony. Some might be, completely, new. But I think if you can have a healthy debate, the discussion can open up to, were these implanted memories? Is there something that there might be another layer to it? There might be more to the story. There might be speculations of trying to make sense out of something that isn't based in fact. And without undermining the person, can we just have a healthy discussion? I mean, I talk about a Mars recruitment when people are like, that's really out there. Are you sure that's exactly what happened? I'm like, well, I didn't actually go to Mars. So I do question whether or not some of this was done through virtual reality. If some people were experiencing going off planet and it wasn't exactly like landing on the surface of Mars, I have to consider all of that. So I like to take the approach of ask the tough questions. Let's bring this out on the table. Let's have a open, healthy discussion about it. Exercise discernment, have an open mind, but I'm not afraid to rethink things. And there's certain things that I can safely say, whether you believe it or not. I know it's true because it happened to me, but I don't expect everybody to just run wild with it and be like, oh, okay, that's the truth. But I feel, my book being called Awakening the Truth Frequency, Living Your Authenticity. What is your truth? Not my truth, but how does this all land with you? Be true to yourself. That's the most important thing. It's not about just taking it all in based in my story. It's to inspire something in you to feel maybe a permission to share yours. And then let's talk about it and connect dots and have a great, connection, and bring all this out on the table. That's my approach. And when I listen to people, yeah, I might ask, questions based in discernment, but I always keep an open mind. But I don't have fixed beliefs either, except for the things I know absolutely to be true, that my body frequency, like kinesiology, is saying yes. And I do a lot of work with that, when there are question marks or unknowns. It gives me more permission to dig deeper and maybe research. I kind of put it on the back burner until I'm absolutely sure. But I never like to override somebody else's experience and say, oh, that's not true or that's true. It's more the way I process it later. I hope they appreciate that I take my time with it. And I hope people have discernment and take their time with mine as well.
Absolutely. I think everything you just said totally resonates with me, and we do the same thing. So I'm totally aligned with just about everything here. But it's always about, well, intuition, right? What feels right? Because how do you know if people have actually been on Mars or Montauk or been part of satanic rituals or been under MK Ultra mind control or having met or been, well, confronted by different alien races? And we are really juggling with all of these topics, right? So there's a lot to process. And who is controlled opposition, who is truthful, who is real, and what is, and sometimes you get criticized for having somebody on the show that talks about these really wild this wild stuff and with these wild claims, but then you have somebody on talking about the New World Order and the political regime, and all of that sort of is factual, right? So I mean, it's a broad aspect of all of what is within the truth movement and in this world of conspiracy and truth research, right?
Totally. Yeah, there's so much to it. And the thing is, whether you believe in my story or not, that doesn't determine whether or not I'm going to be friends with the person. I'm not into banning or blocking because people have a hard time processing or understanding, my story. And the harder the questions, I mean, the more it's going to bring out in me. And like I said, there's some things I'm very solid with, and other things I'm like, I'm not sure. What do you think? Right? The things I'm solid with, truth is solid in itself. It doesn't require believers. It'll stand the test of time, whether there's people agreeing with it or not. So there's not a necessity of believers in those kind of things. As far as the kind of people we interview, yeah, there's certain signs of controlled opposition. And when I start to sense it or a false narrative, I'm very careful of saying that name. I've alluded to it before, and it's real obvious. People are like, oh, you're talking about this person, right? And then I maybe take down the post. I don't want to create divide and conquer. I don't want people to choose sides either if there's opposing viewpoints. Like, oh, you got to choose my way, or if you're friends with that person, we're not friends anymore. I find a lot of that really, really petty, and I think the priority is unifying and working together and supporting one another to the best of our ability, knowing that there are possibilities of things not fully lining up, but maybe that person doesn't realize that or hasn't quite grasped that. But I'm not the one who can decide. I might just feel it deep within me. And then there's obvious markers of if you don't go along with it, that's it. And to me, that's controlled opposition in a lot of ways. But there's some people that don't realize that they've been set up for that. There are a lot of people that are operating under deep state agendas without knowing it, because a lot of them are convinced that they're saving humanity or it's for the betterment of humanity. The recruiter that was involved with the Mars thing, he was told that humanity needs this. You're like a hero. You're doing the right thing. And he believed it. And I could tell, no. There's artificial telepathy. You're getting this information, and it's propping you up to believing something that I don't think is actually true. But it's not true for me. If it's true for you, great. But I just can't go along with it. And I just wish you the best. And that's kind of how we left it. And the more I researched, the more it validated it. People came out with websites. They were really going down the rabbit holes about who these individuals were. And I didn't have that information. I only had my intuition. And phew, my intuition steered me correctly. But before, I didn't have enough information. So I think there's a lot of things that we're going to see validated later on that we might not have enough information about in the here and now. But the most important thing is we don't give our power away and lose ourselves because people can't handle discernment. Again, it doesn't have to make or break relationships. Truth doesn't require belief. Usually a controlled opposition requires your belief.
It's
And
very
that's
important what you're saying because people that are listening to this, to our channel and your channel and whatever, they should take from it what they want and what they feel is right and what resonates with them, right? And also, I think it's very important what you're saying. Some people don't know that they're actually being set up for and being and that they are control opposition because they don't know what's behind all that. They believe they're speaking the truth, right?
totally. Yeah, and yeah, I think there's sort of a confusion that you can see in that person. And other times, is it an altar? Are they running an altar? I mean, how much can a person really break through the mind control fully and completely? And I can tell with certain people like Kathy O'Brien that she's on the other side of so much. She wrote a book, PTSD, A Time to Heal. Some other people I interview, the kind of energy work they do, the transparency that they hold, the acknowledgement of all these different altars, even ones that were groomed to play a role in these kind of, I don't like saying end times, but that they have a groomed altar to play a leadership role in these times that look like it's all about being a whistleblower or being about ascension when it's actually a part of their greater agenda. So I think the more transparency there is and more acknowledgement, um, and talking about the different tools and methods to really overcome this level of mind control or SRA is important because some people there you can tell they're just not fully free. And I have so much compassion for how difficult that must be. And also what we see in the greater world, a lot of individuals are blackmailed. They've been filmed and compromised and they don't even remember. Can we have a greater understanding so we don't throw them all under a bus and we realize the trauma-based mind control and how deep this actually goes to help them come clean and give them permission to say, look, the reason I'm not coming clean is because this is going to destroy my reputation because I was caught doing this, but I don't remember I was drugged. A lot of people who are able to admit that and say that, people appreciate them and their bravery and their courage. So hopefully we'll see more of that.
And also, as certain people evolve, it's wonderful when they can actually let go of their egos, so to speak, and come out and say, I was wrong about this because now I've learned this much and more than before, which is also important because some people do get very angered when you question them in a, let's say, in a more discerning or hard way, which I have experienced that.
Oh, for
Probably
sure.
you have too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there are things that I said years ago that aren't the same anymore. And I'll make it clear. Yeah, I really did think this. I didn't have a fixed belief about it, but I thought it was important to put it out there and see what other people have to say. Now I've run into more people, whistleblowers, more testimony. And I feel very confident about sharing this. And it's very much in my book. I'll present that, but I'll also say, but this is what I originally heard. And I want to leave it up to the reader to discern. I said, it could be this, it could be that. I'm leaning towards this. What do you think? Because, yeah, I mean, there has to be a certain level of humility. We're dealing with multi-level layers of all of this. False narratives, covering up a hidden history, a history that they're attempting to rewrite. So it's been very interesting being in the Eisenhower family because there's so many rumors about him. At first, I'm like, well, what if they're true? We got to talk about this. I don't like these stories, but what if it's true? And I've come to realize years later, and the timing of putting my book out was actually perfect because it was after I met these folks that it actually isn't what happened. And when I found out the deeper truth, it was way better and it made a hell of a lot more sense. But at the same time, this is to discern. It's like putting it out all out on the table because there might be an expert that says, you know what? My great grandparent or a family member was there. And it's sort of like this book by Bach talking about Eisenhower being a war criminal. I'm like, that just doesn't feel right. But what if that's true? I'm not here to be biased. I'm here for truth. If that happened, let's talk about it.
Now you are getting into your history and background. That's just perfect. I just want to show your book to the audience here. Awakening the Truth Frequency. It's a really great book, and there's a lot of pictures and so many different interesting topics here about the whole history of the universe and what we're also on planet Earth. We want to get into as much as we can in this, at least this part one, with you now. But please go on with your background and your history as the great-granddaughter of President Dwight D. Eisenhower.
just as, yeah, examples to what we're talking about. It's been very interesting because I know we have a strong link spiritually to each other. Starting from when I was a child, he was like appearing to me. And I just had a lot of questions. I had a lot of downloads coming in. I had a lot of recollection of just a deeper soul bond. I met Mamie when I was a young child. I stayed at the Gettysburg farm, which him and her lived in for some time. And then when she was on her deathbed, when I was a young child, up until about the age of 5, I was holding her hand while she was on her deathbed. He had already passed. But, different rumors have come up over the course of time. I was pre-targeted before birth because he was briefed that a descendant would come in and help expose information along with a lot of others, that there would be a huge number of us that would bring about truth, right? And that really relieved him during that time because there was an unconditional surrender agreement that took place in 1952 under Truman. And I got to be careful what I share because I know this is on YouTube. But starting in the 1930s were when these deals happened, abduction deals, technology trades. We had reached warp 1, and so there was collaboration happening between humans and off-planet entities. And I'll kind of keep that simple. So a lot had already taken place before he became president. Project Paperclip, Roswell crash, Admiral Byrd's expedition to Antarctica. By the time he entered presidency, he had inherited this immense problem. But in order to hide, they created false narratives, putting the blame on him, also making him out to be a war criminal. So I'm like, when I first heard all this, I'm like, well, what if that's true? Well, I can have his back only up to a certain point. I wasn't there, but I know he's a good man. So what could be the possible reasons this would have happened? So I started to explore from that angle. Then I met more whistleblowers, more experiencers, people that would know, and a difference between the historian that wrote about the actual war criminal and putting Germans to death and a true historian, military historian, who had written about 20 books, put out a video saying what really happened that said it didn't happen the way this other guy's explaining. And then when I read the comments, there were family members saying, yeah, they didn't treat the POWs in a terrible way, like this other guy is saying. They had family members there that said that they were treated very well, but there were so many displaced that everybody ran into food shortages. Excuse my throat. So, I'll write articles or blogs. I'll say, this is what this person's saying. Okay, here's what this person is saying. But look at the evidence with all the different family members that are in the comments where this person really doesn't have any testimony. And some of them might have been, created purposely. So what do you think, right? I like that whole, well, what do you think? Here's what I'm finding. To me, it's like when you're a detective, here's some clues. But there are very intelligent researchers out there. So it's kind of like, what are you getting? Are you seeing the same? Did you see anything to refute this? Do you have family members? So I really like to put it out on the table. And I think that's what he really wants as well. And I know I have an agreement to expose a lot that happened during his administration that has been hidden. There's 20 levels of top secret above the president when he became president, like 30 levels.
So what you were saying before, I think, or what you were alluding to, was that U.S. commander under President Truman, Valiant Thor, warned the U.S. in 1952 that the alien race, known to us as the Nordics, were in bed with the Nazis. So, I mean, please explain this. This is a very fascinating thing. And how do we know, how do you know?
Yeah. So these are all quotes from Dan Cooper, and I have his bio in the book. He's, a physicist. He is an inventor of over unity generators and other free energy type of technologies on the level of like Tesla, working with, 6-force, 7-force, 8-force. The 6-force has to do with just like anti-gravity type, stuff. And I've done some interviews with him, and we had a back and forth for a while under this roundtable that I had done. And he just openly said, this is not actually what happened. This is what happened. And I said, oh my gosh, can I give you my email? And then for about 2 years, 3 years, last couple of years, we've had a back and forth, probably 80 to 100 emails. All these emails are actually piling up. And then I asked him, can I quote you in my book? So he approved, these quotes. He said, Val Thor worked with Eisenhower and he was rogue. There was non-intervention agreements. And so Val Thor went rogue in order to help advise Eisenhower's administration about what was really, taking place. He warned about the Nordics and the Greys in 1952. Later in the later 1950s, he was put on VIP status at the Pentagon. And it didn't go very far because the Joint Chiefs of Staff, basically the shadow government, shut down the mission. But supposedly there's 200 ships, and Victor 1, connected to Val Thor, is stationed at Lake Mead, and it's got invisibility, but you can sense the energy field if you like throw rocks and you see birds kind of flying around it. And this is what, some people have shared. I've been to Lake Mead. I could tell there was something there, and there's something underground where I guess the ships can come in and out of. And again, there's things that I've experienced telepathically with Val. A lot of remote viewers and clairvoyants that I've worked with throughout my life have noted the Lincoln connection. And they said the reason Eisenhower was brief is because I was one of his advisors on a galactic level, coming from, either, well, I had a link with the Venusians, but I was like a spirit guide. And I was told that in my early 20s up until now, the same kind of thing, that, I helped advise his administration. And there was an agreement for me to be born into the family. They intercepted that information and pre-targeted me to go off planet because they wanted to trip up this mission. They didn't want me to bring about the truth. They didn't want me to expose what really took place in his administration. So they figured if they got me early and they steered me off in this direction, and they set me up with a partner that they located with me in past life with Looking Glass Technology, seeing that we had a sacred union, deep, relationship.
So
that
were you put under MK Ultra mind control, do you think?
No, I mean, I've done hypnoregression. I wasn't a part of any of these projects or programs, but they used him as sort of like a honey trap. They pulled him in, and I could tell that he was under their control because he would disappear for days and not remember. And he referred to somebody as his handler, and I have that person's name. I believe I put him in the book. When I first went public, I exposed his name. So he put out a public announcement like, oh, I've been outed again. Laura Eisenhower's outing me. And I didn't make them out to be the enemy because, a lot of the individuals that are in the aviary, a lot of them are very well-intentioned. Some are more the like ringleader. And the guy that was the handler of my partner, probably the ringleader of this particular group. And basically through artificial telepathy, they were guiding him to plan this Mars mission where we would be permanent colonists, arriving around 2012, right? So this happened in 2006. That's when I met him. So they knew they couldn't mind control me. And that was what numerous whistleblowers, remote viewers, and psychics have told me. And I refused it from the very beginning. And I could see through it, and I was trying to tell him, and he's like, he wouldn't have it. I even got rare earth magnets, and I tried to stick it where I thought he had implants to try and deactivate it. And I was refusing. I had very prophetic dreams about what would happen if I went, and I'd wake up the next morning like, I'm absolutely not going. But he dropped the whole idea. They would purposely make sure that he dropped the whole idea. We ended up getting married. I moved to North Carolina, and I thought this was something that would be public. I didn't think it was all secrecy. I thought it was like, I was pretty naive back then. And when he brought it back up and he said, you know what? I didn't meet you in the normal way. We met at a gathering. You were a mission. They sent me to meet you. They've been tracking you. And when he told me that, he had to unplug all the electronics, the cell phone battery, the computer, unplug everything, all electronics. He said, they're listening to us. I can only tell you right now that you were a mission and that we did not meet in the natural way. I said, well, we certainly fell for each other. How's that? And that's when I found out more. A sort of defector told me about the Looking Glass technology. And he said that they knew that we had this union and they wanted to take that to Mars. They wanted our codes. They wanted to take it to Mars. And he said, but this is to save humanity because of what they're planning to do on the planet. And I said, in my knowingness and my mission, my connection with Ike and my guides and source energy, my higher self, that I'm not here to run away. If that's even a well-intentioned agenda, there's something operating behind it that is based in some kind of fear tactic, like we need to evacuate the planet. I said, we need to stay here and heal the planetary grids. There's a lot of grid workers here. There's a lot of advanced souls that just living your truth is enough to collapse the control matrix. I knew that. not necessarily people that are going with the intention of doing grid work, that are just living their truth. That's enough, right? You override all the social engineering, all the different dark weapons that are trying to scramble our brain and keep us in these indoctrination programs. And I just said, I'm going to expose these dark technologies. And around that time, I heard of Michael Salla. He got me on the phone when I was breaking up with the partner. And I'm like living near this golf course, probably talking faster than I do now. So I'm trying to talk slow. And I'm just like to Michael Salla. He's like, whoa. And then I heard of Project Camelot, all these whistleblowers talking about Mars, and Andrew Basiago, Alfred Lambermont Weber. So we started collaborating and putting our minds together. Andrew was a part of Project Pegasus, and some other people who,
Yeah, I know of well of his story, obviously. It's very interesting also with the time
yeah,
traveling and the Mars teleportation and all of that. Very
right,
fascinating.
right. And he was a childhood participant, so there was a lot of experimentation on him.
And he
So
also
we,
saw, well, President Obama there, right?
Mhm. Barry Soetoro
There.
was in the Mars training program at College of the Siskiyous in Mount Shasta. And in 2012, the year I was supposed to go to Mars, I was at a star knowledge conference and I looked through the telescope at Venus crossing over the sun because it was June 5th, 2011, 2012, 2012. And I remember being like, they didn't want me here. And I'm standing right on top of the training program because I'm at College of the Siskiyous looking through this telescope. What a synchronicity. The same year they wanted me to be on Mars. Now, how successful was that mission actually going to be? Was it just to trip me up? Was but I overheard conversations where they were trying to terraform Mars and they were refurbishing colonies that were established in the 1930s, moon bases, Mars bases, right? So it all started to link up, especially after talking to Dan Cooper, who I feature a lot in my book. So he was under their spell, my partner, but he was able to leak some things to me. And then when he plugged everything back in, he acted like he didn't tell me anything. And again, they were able to impact him remotely somehow. So I don't know how that leak was possible. But once that happened, this other guy started to inform me about stuff, and I had that dream. And anyway, once I got out of it, I moved down the street. A lot of really bad stuff started to happen to him because, in their eyes, he had failed the mission. They had sent him to meet with me. He somehow exposed it. I was refusing to go from the get-go. So he wasn't successful. They dropped him.
So,
And
so
him and
he
I
was
just
there to kind of hijack you in a way.
He was used as bait, yeah. But he was being convinced that this was the right thing to do. And he knew that we had an affinity. Somebody else told me about the Looking Glass, but he had referred to the Looking Glass and Orion's Cube and all these other weird texts that we hear about with some of the people you and I interview. So it was like a really crazy time. All I could do was just get away from it. All I could do was trust my intuition. So going back to that, but again, am I correct in my assessment? I'm still processing it all, and I'm still open to hearing, what other people have to say. So you and I met Randy
But
Kramer, right? He was supposedly serving on Mars or the Mars Defense Force. So there's definitely something going on there.
but do you think that that's a true story when you're talking about your ex-partner that they are trying to set you up? Do you actually think he was lying, trying because he was, let's say, a little bit unstable, or was it actually true and valid what he was saying that he was, or what you discovered about your relationship?
Well, I didn't, I mean, when I was publicly talking about it, once I met Michael Salla and I started to collaborate with Andrew Basiago, I would tell my story, but I'm like, this is what happened. This is what he told me, with a lot of big question marks. Once I met enough individuals that were experiencers or childhood participant like Andrew Basiago, Randy Kramer, who wrote to me, said he was a part of Ike's Force, the UMC Special Section. And it was a very positive military unit that Eisenhower set up to keep the MJ-12 boys in check because he had lost control of the whole um, administration because the president didn't have any real power. And this was a carryover, this shadow government that he really couldn't stop. So he worked with Val Thor to covertly set up the White Hats, the Earth Alliance, the USMC Special Section, Ike's Force that Randy Kramer's a part of. And all this still survives today. So this is wonderful of Eisenhower to have been able to do that along with other well-intentioned people during his administration. And also being briefed that there would be individuals like myself and you and others that would be all about the truth and that we would bring all this to light. And again, I love the beginning of this conversation to discern, to have this greater conversation. So when he told me all that, I'm like thinking, well, does he really know what he's talking about? He's disappearing for days. He doesn't remember. He's acting very robotic. He did unplug everything to tell me this. And then this other guy said, they located you. They said they knew I wouldn't just fall for somebody that was some agent set up to woo me, that, they needed somebody I had a direct connection with, that I had a real soul connection with. So they kind of weaponized him, used him as bait to try and get us to Mars while convincing him this was the right thing to do. I'm thinking, no, 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 I know that I'm not the only one here, that we're here to expose this stuff. I was very aware of my mission when I was born. I was having exchanges with Ike telepathically. My guides, Val felt like he was present because when I heard about him later, I'm like, I know Val, I know him. Lots of downloads. I was overwhelmed as a child. My mom didn't know what to do with me, and I kept leaking stuff to her. I'm like, and a lot about just our sacred, the hierogamic union, what our true DNA is, the planetary grids, galactic history. And then I would research and try and find things that aligned with what my intuition was telling me with discernment. Yeah. Like, okay, I'm not just going to believe everything I hear. Does it line up with what my soul remembers and knows?
So when you're saying that you're communicating telepathically with your great-grandfather, President Eisenhower, who clearly died so many years ago, I mean, how does that work? Please explain that to the audience. Is that's it's like meeting him on an astral plane or going into meditation and connecting with him, communicating with him, talking to him in that way? Or is it your intuition digging into that his soul frequency or what? How does it work? Please try and explain that.
I kept seeing this bald man show up with a military uniform, and then I'd look at books on the bookshelf. I'm like, oh, all right, we're related to him. And the whole family talks about him constantly. I go to my granddad's house, his son, I look in family albums. All the books that my granddad has written, John S.D. Eisenhower, he's written about 12 books. My uncle David has written a bunch of books. My mom has written, but I'm like, whoa, okay. Wow. And this guy was president, he was general. And and I'm just really young and just trying to assess all this. I'm like, well, I know him. And I was such the black sheep of the family. I was never political. And most of the Eisenhowers actually went independent because they knew both sides were compromised. So that was kind of a relief to see that. And but I saw all this sort of heavy blame, or, oh, you must be a part of the bloodline and you must have gone through all these different projects and programs because you're in this presidential bloodline. I'm like, well, German Swiss Mennonite farmers, he grew up under a really strict religious background and family, living very close to the land, considered poverty, right? Definitely not no trust funds or none of that kind of affiliation. And anybody who's born into that, a lot of times they're there to break the spell. Those are really, really intense missions. So I had nothing to hide if that was true, because I'm here for truth, right? So I did a lot of hypnoregression. I worked with lots of clairvoyance. A lot of this came about synchronistically, and it helped me to see, because I was discerning with myself. I'm like, well, what if? What if? Same with him. What if? What if? And being sort of a healthy skeptic helped me to dig deep to validate certain things I'm comfortable talking about now. So when it was very clear that we did have a connection, because we had an affinity, and I just knew him. He spoke Gaelic. He was a musician. I mean, he had all these, incredible qualities, very organic soul, but he was totally compromised. And I'm like, how on earth did this happen? He had an Irish kind of, background. And I just remembered sort of this, I don't know, ancient lifetimes together. And so it didn't surprise me when I heard it. It wasn't like, oh, based in suggestion. I was like, oh, well, I already knew that. But when all of a sudden it was all kind of denied, we still had a connection. And he one time said to me, I should have just listened to you. I should have just listened to you. Even his friend, after I moved out, who lived with him, was trying to warn him, they're trying to turn you into, a tool. And he wouldn't listen. He couldn't remember. So that's when I really learned about handlers. I really learned more about, MK Ultra. And I don't think it was SRA so much, but he was having abduction scenarios happen, what I think was not authentic at all. And this is when I really researched my labs, military abductions. And this is when I tied the aviary, the group that he was working with, to setting this up. And later on, somebody researched it and said that these guys do gang stalking, military abductions, artificial telepathy. And I said, yes, that's what my intuition was telling me. But they couldn't get to me. So they used him as bait. And they said, we can't mind control her. Not to say that might not have happened in a previous life. I think we've all maybe experienced that to a certain degree. But I was born very, very sovereign and very strong in my mission. And they said they couldn't mind control me, but they thought they could heart control me. If they set me up with bait, she's going to fall in love. She's going to go wherever he goes. She's going to just believe in anything he says. And it didn't work because there were too many anomalies. So remote viewers, clairvoyance, people like Dan Cooper, me asking every time I've ever gotten a reading, like, what's up with that Mars thing? It's all pretty much said the same thing. What happened with him? They wanted the sacred union relationship. It's very threatening to them. And that's why a lot of unions are very targeted. And that's why we're targeted, to not awaken to that blueprint within ourselves, which doesn't require a partner. So they said, you don't need him to stay here and do your mission. So, and I knew that. That's why I broke up without the fear of, oh, how am I going to live without him? I mean, sure, it was devastating, but, I don't believe in that codependency twin flame narrative. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll do this on my own. He's not going to join me. He never ended up going. They canceled the whole thing. So that mission, I do believe.
So how were you supposed to go to Mars anyway?
They said ARCS, A-R-C. So I talked to Andrew Bishago about this. He said that was an acronym. And it wasn't going to be through the jump rooms like Andrew had experienced. They were going to be like some kind of arc, some sort of ship. And I'm like, that sounds really weird.
Teleportation or what?
It could have been. So I have the emails and I have the email exchanges. I think I covered it in my book somewhere in there, but they were called ARCs. So I have an old email account where all my exchanges are, and it mentions all the different characters in the aviary. One, John Alexander. I've already exposed their names, and he's, connected to all sorts of, psychotronic weaponry and Los Alamos, and a lot of really dark characters, some that are known disinfo agents, right? So that's where I'm kind of like, okay, so if he was having these abduction scenarios that felt like artificial or my lab, he thought he was having real abduction experiences, and he said that he was telepathing with them and they were helping set up the whole Mars colonization thing. I'm like, they're doing this, they're setting you up, and they're actually operating behind this, and it's them doing it. He wouldn't believe me. He wouldn't have it. I could barely get 2 words out. I wrote him emails. This is what I was like feeling. And it was almost like one ear and out the other. And I kept feeling like they were flipping him into a different altar. I'm like, how traumatized has this person been? How MK Ultra is he? But we lost all contact. And so, yeah, I know that they were never able to split my mind. They just wanted to manipulate me. It was all done in a very so-called benevolent way. This whole, you're special, we want you to be in a leadership role. And I'm like, that's a red flag, this whole you're special crap. So I think it had to do with being related to Ike. The fact that alternative 3 was the scenario presented to him in his administration, that if I discover all this and call it out, then, well, I did anyway. If they get to me before that, if they target me before I truly awaken to what's going on, because they are able to look into the future, right? Looking glass technology, chronovisors, they knew that I had that in me. So if they could get to me and pre-target me before I begin to awaken to that, then they stand
and
a
then
chance.
You could be used for disinformation and to split the growing truth movement, I expect.
Yeah, or not to be on planet at all, and that I'd be recruited, either a trip to Mars, maybe it would have been delayed because maybe we never were going to go to Mars. It was just a front, or because I know that stuff happens on Mars and there are colonies.
But do we really know what's the best evidence we have for that?
People that have served 20 and back, the Mars Defense Force, Andrew Bishago, jump rooms. But a part of me was like, what if this is virtual reality? What if they're jumping to a simulation? So unless I've been there myself and I've got my feet in the dirt and I'm coming back with red sand on my toes, I can't speak for other people. So the reason I said I know something's going on there is because I know in the 30s, once we reach warp 1, some of the alliances that were forming allowed bases to be put on the moon and Mars, right? So I can only go by what super soldiers say, what people that say that they've been there say. And between you and me, and maybe, when I get a chance to talk to them, when I interview them, I suggest these things like, what if? I tend to just,
That's the
listen to their
best thing we
story.
can do, really. It's very important to do that, right? Because what do we really know? We are listening to all of that. We are open to all of this, and we want to hear all of those stories. But it's difficult when you really don't have hard evidence, right? And how could you get hard evidence
Right,
with a topic
right.
like that?
Totally. So my evidence is the emails, the email exchanges, the plan to terraform, the refurbishing of colonies that were already there, ancient colonies, to make them more livable in these times. And that Randy Kramer says there's 5 bases. Other people have said that there are 5 bases, 2 people that don't even know each other. So I tend to just have these conversations. I'm like, okay, more than one person is saying this. These are their experiences, this whole 20 and back. A lot of people are saying that they've had this. Some people are getting memories back, and some people are disputing that those memories are legit. So all we can really do is open up the conversation, see, what they have to say. I mean, Tony Rodriguez, a very interesting story. He wasn't born into it, but he bullied some kid and their father pulled him in. And when you hear the consistency of these memories, and I noticed this with Andrew Bashagar, I used to talk on the phone with him, and I go to the grocery store and back just holding the phone, and literally he wouldn't stop talking for 4 hours straight. And then I'd talk to him again or do an interview, same thing verbatim almost. I'm like, this guy does not doubt what he is saying, but what he's experiencing, how much are they monitoring this or controlling what he's allowed to say, or is he whistleblowing all of it? So I'm not one to doubt, but I have that inner critic and discerning part of me. And if I feel that that person's comfortable with me asking the tough questions, I will. And if it's hard to just insert it, then I'll just listen to what they have to say, and maybe I'll talk to somebody like you about it. And it shouldn't bother anybody because I don't mind when people do it to me. I love your questions. Like, how do you know? Right. And so all I can say is I have all these emails. I don't think I took clips of them in my book, but I can send them forward, any of them. I still have them. I held on to them. I held on to as much evidence as I possibly could during that time I was with him. And then all the corroborating remote viewers. And I've worked with a few to help me see, like, what do they see? Wow, it lines up. Okay, that lines up. If something doesn't line up, I take note of it. And yeah, so my book is sort of a bunch of different possibilities, not just about that, because I only know what I experienced and what I was told, right? But again, how does this line up with other people that may have gone to Mars, that may know more about what is happening there? I didn't go. I refused to go. A lot of people are, didn't you go to Mars? Are you a super soldier? And I'm like, no, I never have said that. You will not find one interview where I've ever said that. And I'm not changing anything that I've ever said. I'm only adding to it based on new people that I've met. Some of the adjustments that I'm making are more with what I've learned about Eisenhower and things that I really feel deep down are true, because a lot of what I was sharing before didn't make any sense. I'm like, this doesn't make sense that he would do that. But if he did, I can understand that it might have happened because of this or that reason, that they surrendered, they had no choice, that he was coerced. But no, it makes even more sense that these abductions were already underway starting in the 30s, that this was a false narrative. So they hid behind all of this, rewrote history, and acted like this all began in 1954. Other whistleblowers, Dan Cooper, who doesn't consider himself a whistleblower, but he's that physicist. He's the one that was in a 20 and back. He was created and engineered by a Japanese geneticist and inserted in his mother's womb, who has immunities, and he never signed an NDA, who's allowed to speak on this topic, said that Eisenhower invaded Dulce Underground Base in 1954 to take out the Greys. So how is he the same year signing a treaty with them? It doesn't make any sense. He said, I tell you what, all the people that are telling you that, they don't have access to what's above top secret. They don't tell the whistleblowers, the people that are working for them, this hidden information, because if they ever did blow the whistle, then all of a sudden their front has been exposed.
So,
So
what is actually the most truthful story about President Eisenhower and his, let's say, his treaty or his meeting with these alien beings? And also mention what alien beings did he actually meet? What alien groups were there physically with him in 1954 when you had this meeting or treaty? Or take us through what you believe is the truest story.
yeah, the truest story is that he did not sign any treaties. It was three-letter organizations, MJ-12, did it behind his back. He had already lost control because in 1952 there was an unconditional surrender agreement. Basically, the threat of death or the threat to your family members were extreme. So none of that could be exposed. It's being exposed now. Dan Cooper's probably one of the only few individuals that talk about it. But when I talked to Michael Sala, he said these are all the reasons that actually make sense. When I talked to other researchers, they said this is why this makes a lot more sense than the official narrative of Eisenhower signing treaties. First off, when he came into office, Project Paperclip had already happened. The scientists were already working in those MK Ultra projects, Montauk, all of that, Philadelphia experiment. And he tried to take the Nazis out. I mean, he was a general. And what I think is the reason they allowed him to become president is similar to why they recruited me to go to Mars. If you're wanting to take something down, the best thing they can do is act like they're your friend and they're on your side when really they're not. So I know that nefarious people helped him to become president that wanted to put him in that position to scapegoat him. He did amazing things during his presidency, but after his death and when disclosure started to happen, all of a sudden he can't speak for himself. And it's this Greada Treaty. And I've been getting emails about it ever since I went public. Your great grandfather sold us out to the aliens and this and that. I'm like, okay, what if he did? Well, I'm not going to hide. I'm going to talk about this. Let's talk about it. And that's when I started to talk with other people that would know. And they said, well, if he did, there's no way that he wanted to sell us out. He must have been compromised. I said, well, that makes sense because I know he's not on their side at all. I was raised in this family. There's none of that. And I looked very deeply into every family member, into what was going on at every gathering.
And he's not part of an alien bloodline. And
No.
you would be one too, right?
Yeah, and I vetted all this family members. We've always been a really, really close family. Everybody's worked really hard. My mom works incredibly hard. My uncle's a professor at a university. They're all authors. They've worked incredibly hard. And Eisenhower, everything that was linked to him has become a museum. So there's nothing passed down. There's no banksters. There's no wealth. He never sold the family out. And again, if people were born into that, that's not like a criticism if they were. There's a lot of people that were born to take that down from the inside. But what I realize is I got to have this guy's back because I've never experienced more lies and projection on this man and my family. And to grow up in it and experience it firsthand while asking all the questions, doing hypnoregression. Well, what if even if it wasn't in the family, what if I was dragged off of some of these functions that my mom went to? I was recruited to go to Mars. That wouldn't be that far-fetched. So I was always asking these kind of questions. So anyway, he met with Val Thor. Val Thor warned about the Nordics and the Greys. And because of that, he called the First Army and the Berets and ordered an invasion of Dulce in 1954. We lost that battle 30-1. He decided not to invade again. Supposedly he had some kind of contact with the Tijetans, not the Nordics. And there's a book written about it. And that's when it talks about the Guardians gifting the family and that a whole migration of souls would come in, that we'd all work together to bring about the truth. So this is your show, right? This is the path that you've walked, not falling prey to things that you were noticing, right? So all of us strong souls that chose this path, no matter what life might have done or taken us, and you're still doing, both, which is incredible. I mean, you're extraordinarily talented and amazing musician, but you've chosen truth. And you call out this stuff, right? So when I met you, I'm like, oh, it's one of the souls that are here, that we'd all find each other and meet each other. And that's why there's that instant feeling of familiarity and family. Because I know, like, before coming in, we're like, all right, here we go. We're all going to go in. And so anyway, so he was briefed about that. And that was with the Tijet. And so it's in this book that was never published called Guardians of the Cell Worlds. And it talks about how this one man, this military man who became a part of the, president in the 1950s, which meets his description, was told that, and that the descendant is still out there, exposing all that she can. And it's in this book. And this lady's like, this is about you and your friends. Because it said this migration of souls was coming in. And, but it wouldn't be easy. So he was reassured. He had like 8 heart attacks, right? I believe that the most contact he had was with benevolent groups. If he was exposed at all to the grays, he might have, because that whole dentist story, right? He might have been in proximity, but he was not allowed. Dan Cooper has made this clear. I have so many email messages where he's like, how many times do I have to tell you? Anybody who's telling you that might not realize, even though they're whistleblowers, that they're spreading disinformation, because that's all the information they were given. So when they think they're blowing the whistle, they're saying and exposing what the deep state wants them to expose, because these are hidden layers. He goes, the only reason I can say it is because I didn't sign an NDA and I have immunities. He was a duelist, a sword duelist in these SSP programs, and he won all the tournaments. So they granted him this gift. So anybody who talks to Dan Cooper, it's good to ask him the tough questions, to be very, very discerning. He welcomes that. He wants that. So far, we've been on with David Rodriguez, Michael Jaco, and Scott McKay. And all the comments are like, wow, people aren't doubting him at all. He knows his stuff.
What about the reptilians, though, Laura? Because a lot of people, we've been talking about this for years, that the reptilians are behind all of the governments, controlling the governments behind the scenes. So would he not normally or naturally have met up with the reptilians or known about them, maybe, if he was in that position?
I do feel that there was compartmentalism, and when he was briefed by Val Thor, that's when he was able to see what he was not able to see. Because if you're talking 30 levels above the president and the position of the presidency didn't have any more power, and then all of a sudden he briefs Kennedy, Kennedy gets assassinated for exposing what Eisenhower knew and what he was beginning to set up covertly in order to safeguard our opportunity and chances of liberation. And again, not just him, those that came before him, those that worked alongside him, those that were a part of the positive military units that he, established. Also something connected to turning super soldiers in a positive direction and helping to de-weaponize them. Something called Project Moonshadow, and some things that Randy Kramer knows about put him in a more benevolent position, that he was more in service to humanity than operating under like Dark Fleet. I think there was a knowingness, but he didn't attend these meetings where all of a sudden they're shapeshifting. Those that attended were usually, I would say, hybrids, and had the ability to kind of join in and shift. They had some kind of hybridization take place, and through trauma-based mind control, they were able to activate that particular aspect of their DNA. But the recollection of it in their other form wouldn't have been that much, but they were literally like under some kind of possession or running a kind of altar, or brought in, in this sort of like agreement, like they're like vessels that are being used, that once had an original soul that no longer is there. And now it's, when you look at these kind of rituals, or Aleister Crowley and the kind of magic that he practiced, it was really conjuring up these demons and creating attachments, right? Are those reptilians? Are those the demons? I mean, I haven't been there. I've interviewed a lot of people. So because Eisenhower wasn't at these rituals and wasn't a part of it, I think he realized that the people that
And you also know that for sure, right? That Eisenhower was not part of the dark web in that way. I mean, those, well, cult circles, the Illuminati.
no, he was incredibly religious, but he wasn't into religion separating people from each other. There's a lot of speeches where he talks about all religions matter. He put "In God We Trust" on the dollar bill. He prayed before everything. He was raised very, very strict. So it's not in the family. It's not bloodline. Some people are like, every president is bloodline. And I'm like, well, he's an anomaly. And I believe that this current administration, we have a bit of an anomaly. I know his hands are tied in certain places, because when you look at the United States and all this infiltration, the deep state very much operates.
Well, maybe Trump is also part of some kind of an Illuminati bloodline, or a high-ranking bloodline in one way or the other. We've known about this old book with where there's this mention of Baron Trump. I think it's over 100 years old. Some that it, it could be some kind of a time traveling, um, well, an example of time traveling, maybe. We can get into that at some other point. But certainly Trump's uncle, John G. Trump, was the guy working for the CIA or the FBI that was cleaning out all of Nikola Tesla's material, all his evidence, all his stuff at the Hotel New Yorker when he died in 1943. And they came out and said that there was nothing particular to talk about and nothing to show, and all of his about all of his amazing work. So I mean, Trump could also be put in this position that he's in right now.
Well, yeah, I heard about that. I don't know how much bloodline. I mean, very well. I can only speak for Eisenhower, just being in this family,
Right.
and being so suspicious and cautious at the what if that I'm not just saying it to have his back. I'm a black sheep. I'm here for truth. I could care if he was a schmuck, if he was bloodline, I'd be like, yo, I was born into this family and he was a part of this dark nefarious stuff. And I was open to that from the get-go because I sort of figured right off the bat when I kind of woke up to the family I was born into, despite my familiarity with him and my agreements and my soul connection with him, we have amnesia when we're born. So I'm considering everything. The stronger that bond became, the more I had validation from those that really could tap into the energy and remote view. And when I was, digging deep into my own soul memory and really going into it, yeah, there's no evidence at all in the family line. When I do genealogy, when I do research about Ida and David Eisenhower, 7 brothers living, close to the land in basic poverty, being raised Anabaptists, German Swiss Mennonites, moving to the States in 1740s. People say he's a Jew and he hated the Germans and he was involved in trying to genocide them. Not true, not true. And I said, well, maybe it was true, right? So I came from that angle of worst case scenario. I'm willing to talk about it. But when every time I attempted to, some synchronicity would happen, some sort of like I would find another researcher, I'd see another possibility, and I would just take my time with it until I had enough to go
But
on
what about
to be.
rigged elections?
I think yeah, I mean, back then they wanted him to be president. So how he got into office, people loved him after the war. When you go to Europe and certain countries, he's considered a war hero. People love him. After the Second World War, when we surrendered, when Germany surrendered and people thought we won the Second World War, he was like, but the thing is, we
Yeah,
did not
but
win the
did
Second World
we?
War.
We
We didn't.
didn't. We
No,
didn't.
exactly. So this infiltration that happened in the 40s and 50s before he became president, he was led to believe until he saw enough evidence. I think Val played a really, really big part, but the Admiral Byrd expedition, the Nazis going to Antarctica, the fact that this infiltration took place, and all of a sudden we have geoengineering, we have these MK Ultra projects, we have Montauk, we have social engineering agendas that people think is progressive. They think it's the land of the free and the home of the brave. And what I was being communicated and why he's played such a huge role in my life is because I could feel his presence nudging me in the right direction. Like, you're not done yet. I would feel this urgency, like, I'm not done yet. This is what I'm hearing, but I know there's more to the story. And I could just kind of feel his presence. He'd show up in dreams, and it wasn't manipulative. He's just like, you're not done yet. Keep searching, keep searching. And then, yeah. And it wasn't that I would seek out these people. Like, Dan found me and he wasn't pushy. I gave him my email. I asked him a ton of questions. And he kept answering, and he didn't ask for anything. He didn't want any recognition, really. But he said, well, I didn't sign any NDAs. So, and I asked him, can I quote you in my book? He wasn't like, put me in your book. It was done very, just no red flags, and just how insistent he was. And he didn't care. He's like, you want to believe that? Go for it. But I'm telling you right now, uh, he invaded and he ordered an invasion of Area 51. And I was supposed to be at this interview with Richard Dolan, interviewing this guy called Anonymous, who on his deathbed said Eisenhower ordered an invasion of Area 51 because this had gotten so out of control. Not only did he want to take out the Greys, he wanted to take out all this stuff that was done behind his back. He wanted to invade the base where this was occurring, where this reversal engineering was happening, and where there were, when he invaded Dulce, there was already beings down there. So did he see them? The experimentation going on with aliens, reptilians, and human experimentation? Well, he ordered an invasion. Did he go down there with them? I don't think so. I know he ordered the invasion. We lost. This was in 1954. The Phil Schneider invasion of Dulce, or the war, it wasn't really an invasion, it was a war, was in 1969. So Phil Schneider talks about Eisenhower signing treaties, but this is what Dan told me when I asked him about William Cooper. Dan's not related. His name is Dan Cooper, not related. I asked him about William Cooper and Phil Schneider. I said, well, they're saying that Eisenhower signed treaties. He said they didn't have access. They didn't have access to all this top secret, 30 levels above the president. They're not going to tell people that are working for them. Phil Schneider was a part of engineering and creating these underground bases. So he began to wake up after the Dulce Wars. He started to expose this stuff, but he didn't have full access, right? So if Eisenhower met them, he certainly wasn't joining in with them. And that's why I feel such an affinity to him. And yeah, I know that I was his guide on some level, because too many people have told me that don't know each other since I was in my young 20s, and that I was warning about I was warning about this stuff. His final speech is so cryptic in warning us about the military industrial complex. Why would somebody who's linked with them give us a warning that people are still processing to this day of what he actually meant? They changed the speech. It was the military industrial congressional complex, and it related to this rise of misplaced power, basically the deep state. And that it's actually what Dan says is Draco aren't as in charge as we think. It's the deep state. Yes, there were exchanges and deals made to sell a certain portion of the population. Val Thor helped Eisenhower to connect with the Guardians to put an outer barrier around. And in 2014, that barrier was put around. The seed was planted in his administration. They put the barrier around because it was the same year for that a fake alien invasion was going to occur, and they were going to deliver 90% of the population that had already been sold in the 30s. So this is what Dan says. And it might be great to, continue this conversation, maybe even with him, because it's not as good coming from my mouth as it is his.
So I would like to quote something from your book, Awakening the Truth Frequency. You say the following, and I quote, "The archonic matrix is an imitation of original creation, and thus it doesn't hold any real power unless you give it away. We can only plug our energy and frequency into infinite source energy, or the electronic controls that expand into a finite artificial world." Please explain this and elaborate a little bit on this. This is a very fascinating topic.
Yeah. Well, when we look at, these dark technologies, reversal grid technology, 26,000 years ago, Nephilim reversal grid, Nibirian diodic crystal grid, reversal technology was placed in sacred site like Stonehenge, Stargate 11 along the Michael Mary line. And that's where the Albion and Cathar body used to be connected, the electric magnetic energy, the masculine and feminine. When that was unplugged and when the reversal grid technology was put in and the manipulation of the planetary grids, that basically became technology that harvests and siphon our energy, our life force. When you look at the black cube of Saturn, the Saturn moon matrix, we're dealing with a lot of dark tech that keeps us in the lower octave of these planetary energies. So harvesting and siphoning is literally when our belief systems are linked into something outside of us, where our creative channels are infected with propaganda, with false narratives, with indoctrination, with social engineering. And we literally battery up artificial timelines because we consent to it. We believe in it. They can't do it all on their own. They require us. They can only imitate. They can only create false flags and psyops to convince us that something's a reality when actually it's been engineered. So a lot of the things we see in the news grabs people's attention. So usually when there's going to be a major growth period where we, awaken or we step into, even in our own personal lives, greater authenticity and truth, there's usually some sort of sabotaging influence. A lot of different planetary alignments are weaponized and put in reversal through psyops, right? So like in 2019, 2020, I'm not going to mention Everybody knows what happened during that time. It was a major conjunction between Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. That represented a huge growth period. Well, what better to do than to invert this and put us in fear, put this on us? Because literally the whole system is rigged to keep out the 13th tone, the 13th sign, which is connected with the mother energy anchoring back into the core of the planet. The guardian groups, the grid workers, connected to organic ascension, not just flying off in some rapture, not ascending as in getting higher and higher. It's a higher earth energy, but it's based in doing deep soul work, integration, and switching on dormant strands of DNA and clearing our consciousness of anything that is hooking us in, right? So the more we wake up to the games being played, the more we're on a more positive trajectory. I look at it like a divorce. If you're in a narcissistic or abusive relationship, whether it's the female or male doing it, it's not biased, right? It's like if you're in an abusive relationship, if you're both abusive with each other, that's not a good trajectory. You're not going to have a happy life. If you realize that you're made of something a lot more and that true love is a real thing, you're going to move on and you're going to want better. So that is a more authentic trajectory where, oh, it's a soulmate. Or like when you're around friends that aren't just superficial connections, you meet soul family, like what we all are, right? We're living a much more rich and authentic life. We're not afraid of digging deep. And our trajectory is different than somebody who's really wrapped up in a lot of falsities. But the thing is, it's targeted everything. We see plants in the disclosure movement. We see fake new age stuff. We see false flags and psyops in the news, fake news, and a lot of different tactics being used to hook people in. So it's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, or it's just about calling it out. And when we stand in our authenticity, we collapse the control matrix because it's no longer using us. So, and it doesn't mean we, all of a sudden have all the answers and we're right and everybody's wrong. It just means that we're living in accordance to our intuition, like we talked about, and not just seeing everything face value. If something doesn't feel right, you give it voice. And in doing that, you have stronger relationships because we're not just agreeing to some kind of facade. And we're also not hooked into something that's taking our imagination and infecting it with a possible future that somebody else has written the script for. We're all of a sudden more co-creative, more in touch with our manifestation abilities, and more empowered to write a better script than the one we're being thrown on every level, and we define it more for ourselves, not some outward definition, right? That's why I named the book this. Your truth is not necessarily mine, but we can harmonize and we can begin to appreciate that true oneness is diversity and harmony. I love how other people operate. If it's authentic, if it's a programming, I can only hope that they'll break that down. But I'm going to talk to their soul as best as I can, not to that programming. And I think that's the best thing we can do to each other is not hold each other to these labels, because this is where Mars and our ego identity has been very compartmentalized. People, they're either this political party or that one. They're this label or that label. And I just find that when we're just authentically, this is who I am as a soul. And there's no real label attached to it. But if you must label me because I have an affinity towards this and that, it's understandable because we, sometimes function by category. But am I limited to that label? Am I everything that label tells me I need to be, or am I true to myself? And I'm influencing maybe something within that label. I tend to not carry labels, but that's just me. There's nothing wrong with it. But who is that soul? When we're soul-centered, to me, that's ascension energy. You're authentic, you're soul-centered, and your relationships are more authentic and more deep. We have each other's back. And it's a lot. It's like what's being weaponized right now is the victim mentality. They know that Chiron is squaring Pluto and it's been squaring Mars. Who's the bigger victim wins. Everybody's taking everything personally. Everybody's offended. You have to believe this or go for that. And I think the more transparent we are with our traumas and our wounds, we're also really walking a better path, because those sensitivities and those wounds are being very weaponized through a lot of false movements that Soros funded, right? And it's playing on this growth period that we're in right now to look at how humanity's been traumatized, but we don't remember. We're not learning about our galactic history in third period class. We're not learning about the bigger picture of our galactic DNA. We're not learning about the different races and species out there. And whatever we do hear about, it's pretty limited. There's many different species of grays too, right? So I just think that the more we talk about this, the more it's all out on the table, the more soul-centered we are, we can navigate the madness, because the truth we will be able to see stronger than distortion, because we first started with ourselves. And that's the only way we can really navigate. And if we appreciate that in one another, then all that information doesn't matter as much. Love and healing.
I totally agree with just everything you said there.
Oh, good. Sorry if I'm
That
rambling a
whole
lot.
thing there. No, I totally agree. It's amazing. I couldn't have said it better. I mean, it's that's how it is to be authentic and to discern and to love and to connect with people in the best possible way, and also agree to disagree when that happens too. You know, even if we are in, let's say, a sophisticated holographic illusionary matrix or a simulation like a computer game, we have the sense we feel the sensation of love and that we are evolving and learning and connecting, and that's what we should do, even if we are in this thing.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, to a certain degree, we are witness to it. We might get caught a little bit in it here and there. We might have a survival response if the paychecks aren't coming in and people are afraid to leave certain careers and positions, but a lot are more willing to, because they don't want to compromise themselves when they were being asked to compromise themselves for the sake of that paycheck, to run a sort of something that goes against the Hippocratic Oath, or something that doesn't feel right. Are you still doing it just to get that paycheck? And a lot of people have said, you know what, I can't. I'm not going to. So do we recognize that we're abundant without that dependency bond? Because that to me is the divorce. When you divorce yourself with a dependency bond with the system, you're no longer bound to that simulation. You're no longer bound to a survival response. Your worth is no longer tied to a paycheck. You're all of a sudden, realizing your worth beyond all of that. You realize that you can manifest, that you are abundant, that you will be supported, and that divine flow, magic, and synchronicities come more and more to the surface and to your awareness when you're living your truth, when you're authentic. The rest of it is just a punishment reward system that has been programmed and installed in us from childhood, from past lives, from family, from just society, from television we were raised in. And I think once we drop that dependency bond, we might not let go of it completely, but we're feeling out this whole other thing, just like feeling out a more authentic connection. You might not even trust it at first. Oh, is that really true? Like, you might want to, interrogate a little bit just to warm up to it, because maybe it's too good to be true. Maybe you don't even believe that it exists, because I don't know. You know what I mean? So I think true love doesn't mind that. I think people that are really living their truth and have a lot of value in what they share don't mind the tough questions, don't mind if you doubt, don't mind if you discern. In fact, it's appreciated because we have a deep respect for the process. And I think beings that are benevolent know that we're traumatized as a humanity and don't expect our blind loyalty right off the bat. And I think a lot of those narratives being steered were don't question, go along with this, accept this technology, know that we're here and you need us, but yet it's not about us saving you. But then why are you saying that if we don't go along with it, that we must be aligned with the deep state? I see these manipulative tactics in some of the narratives people are steering. So, and all love and respect to them. It's not like making them the bad guy, but we don't have to go along with this. And until it feels right, and until every ounce of our being on a soul level feels in alignment, I just have ultimate respect for people that hold it at arm's length until it feels good. So, and I think when love wins, we're in the laws of alchemy. That's a law of creation, that we can alchemize all the bioweapons. We can alchemize all that we've been thrown, and that this simulation can begin to crack and break down and dismantle in the face of this override frequency. And that the laws of alchemy are strong enough to turn lead into gold, to turn toxins into a neutralization that the body will recognize as foreign and begin to remove. But if we're linked into the simulation, the body doesn't recognize the information as foreign because it's so toxic or linked to the nanoparticles that we're just assimilated into it. And that's the big concern with transhumanism and artificial timelines. So I feel like once we break the dependency bond, it's like getting out of a bad toxic relationship where you believe what that person is telling you. And if it's undermining you and it's hurting you and you still believe it, wow, it's time for a breakup. It's time for a divorce. And I feel like humanity is going through a big divorce. We're all at different phases. Sometimes it's stickier for others than it is for some that can get away pretty easily and just walk their sovereign path. But we're here to hold hands together, and let's have patience and compassion for where everybody is at, because love does win. And it's not just cheesy love, it's deeper universal love. Because to me, source is intervening through us. And it's unconditional love, forgiveness, compassion, all these virtues that are what it really means to be an embodied Christed individual. Without the worship, without the it's outside of us, without us being lowly sinners. Let's forgive ourselves and one another. We've had so much stacked against us. Let's just encourage each other to bring out the best in one another. And I think that's how we win the war. We can only win it from within, because it's a war on consciousness, and it's trying to pit us against each other. And the most important thing that we can do is override that and say, not on our watch, not to ourselves or one another are we going to allow this. And I feel like you hold this so strong. I felt it the minute I met you. I'm like, you're one of the kindest, most brilliant souls I've ever met. So I'm so grateful.
Oh, thank you so much. And likewise, I felt the same when we met. It was absolutely incredible. Such a soul connection. It's wonderful. And actually, I really would like to say that this is definitely part one, because there's a lot more to discuss, like the Anunnaki, because you have such extended knowledge about that, and AI and the whole climate hoax, and also alien species and all of that. And I think that would be great maybe to do in a part two very soon, because this has been such an uplifting also talk, I think, about the whole truth movement and about authenticity, and us standing together, and that I think is such a great takeaway from it. I don't know what you say to that, or if you have some things you also just want to say to the audience here before we schedule a part two another day.
Oh, yes. And hopefully I didn't talk too fast. I've been going through like kind of this big detox from my energy. It's just like, whoa. Um, so yeah, the Anunnaki is a really important thing to talk about. It's not all, nothing is all negative or all positive, right? But I really feel that it's post distortion. I feel that there was a lot of tinkering, and that it's sort of the good cop, bad cop, but it's within the same kind of web of, I don't know, like I feel like it can be a stepping stone, but and everything deserves redemption, but we have to redeem it through us. Same with, any kind of false light. It's not about blaming something outside of us. It's what do we do with it? Because we inherit the divine blueprint as much as we inherit the foster parents and what they overlaid onto us. And we carry bits of it, but can we begin to access pre-fall, pre-distortion? The 12 strand and beyond. And it's not necessarily embodying the 12 strand, it's having a consciousness link to the integration of polarity that takes us into higher harmonic universes, all the way up to Lyra, Guardian Founders, Unified Field, 0 Point Unified Field. Anunnaki came, later. And I don't like to paint anything as all bad or all good, but what can we learn from it? Because there is manipulation. There is sort of this war and battle of Enki good, Enlil bad, Enlil good, Enki bad. But, out of all that duality, can we begin to reclaim something that helps to neutralize whatever effect that they have on us, or whatever argument it's bringing out? And I talk a lot about the Christophia. Some people say, oh, that's all new age nonsense, but really it isn't, because the true planetary grid network before the overlays and the reversal grid really, we're, holding that. So without the names, you can call it something else. But it's the electromagnetic, it's the masculine and feminine, and how we are a replica of that. Our DNA is a replica of that. The reversal grid technologies, was that all Enki and Enlil? No, but there was Anunnaki influence, the sons of Belial and the Black Suns. So there's some sort of dark agenda, there's some sort of infiltration, and that usually comes about with duality. I look at it like a wound that gets infected. If it's not healed by enhancing the immune system, but it's an infection that gets out of control, then all of a sudden it's going to attract parasites, it's going to attract germs. And I feel like that's almost like what the nefarious beings are that have responded to duality, which is a gaping wound that we need to heal through unity, through polarity integration. And it's not just some fluffy new age concept either, and like I said, true oneness is diversity and harmony, and it's also boundaries. It's not just, but so maybe that's something we can talk about in the future. My website, cosmicguide.org, I have a lot of articles on Substack, so you can find all my social media on my homepage. I do a subscription thing, and I write a lot about all of this. And yeah, so with
And
everything
how,
I
and Laura, how can people purchase your book, Awakening the Truth Frequency? It's a great book. How can they get it?
so cccpublishing.com is Brad Olson, my publisher's website. I think there's still copies there. And you can also get it on Amazon. And I go into my whole life story, all the different underworlds, Dark Night of the Soul, where I got my information from, what I've learned along the way, what I've learned about Eisenhower, what our connection is, what I have learned about his relationship with Val Thor, and some of the differing narratives that I've heard, why I question them. But again, it's what is your truth? And hopefully people walk away feeling more empowered and maybe they feel a relatability to my journey and all the information that I've shared about galactic history and about Eisenhower. It's just for you to discern and just I hope you enjoy. And but I'm here for love. I'm here for healing and the rehabilitation of the human race and reclaiming the fullness of all that we came here to be. And regardless of what our background is, where we come from, what we were born into, that we recognize the uniqueness of the soul that chose to come in and the real work that they're here to do. And let's have patience and compassion and forgiveness as best as we can. And as we dismantle the deep state, let's hopefully call home the souls that have been embedded in their net, that have been compromised. And that way, I really feel like only a few will be left standing, and we'll be much better for it.
Well, that's wonderful, and thank you for all of your amazing work. It's so appreciated, not just by me, but by so many. So we love you, and I love you, and I look forward to seeing you again on Age of Truth very soon. Thank you so much, Laura Eisenhower, for being on with us today.
Thank you, and I can't wait to interview you and be on again. Much love to you, and loud.
Thank you
Bye.
so much to Laura Eisenhower, and thanks to all of you for watching Age of Truth TV. You can support us by clicking onto our website, ageoftruth.tv. And please like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell for notifications. You can sign up for our newsletter on our website, ageoftruth.tv as well. Please also subscribe to our alternative channels on BitChute and Brighteon. Your support is greatly appreciated and very needed. And on behalf of the Age of Truth TV team, we thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.